Okay, we talked about productivity and the determinants of productivity. We've got technology, human capital, physical capital, natural resources. Okay, productivity is the bottom line behind standard of living. You want a higher standard of living, you become more productive. Period. End of story. So now the question is how? How do you become more productive? Well, here. Okay. Right now you're engaged in human capital. That's what you personally can do. You can establish yourself and keep increasing your skills. And the more you produce, the better you can market yourself, and the more you can make money, and you can have a higher standard of living. So, now we're going to talk about government's role in productivity. What can government do? Can they do anything? Well, yeah, there's actually a lot they could do, and some areas just stay out of the way, and in other areas they can actually do some things. But so it's a mixed bag, out of staying out of the way and getting behind and pushing. So here's how government can. The main thing is that government can help by creating an environment where factors listed above can increase. Okay, what can they do here? Well, well-defined property rights. That's a huge one. Okay, I'm stuck at JFK for the moment. Long story, but I'll try to stop the thing when the announcement comes on. But anyway, where was I before I was so rudely interrupted? Well-defined property rights. We talked about property rights already and the importance there. Remember, we had a whole video about the property rights and the Pilgrims, how they nearly starved without property rights when they had just kind of a collective society. And you know what? The incentives to produce weren't there. They were severely weakened. And they switched to a system of property rights where they got to keep the output they produced, and there you go. They boomed.
Welcome to Terminal 4.
They went from starving to producing more than they needed and actually exporting the excess. Efficient legal system where property rights and contracts can be enforced. Well, yeah, government provides the legal system, the courts, the judges, all that. What good are property rights if you can't enforce them through the law? Okay, and contracts. Not a lot of business is going to get done. Not a lot of trade's going to get done. Not much will get done if you can't enter into contracts. Well, of course, you can always enter into contracts. But if they cannot be enforced, what good are they? There again, that's where a legal system comes in. A very important function of government is to provide that, where if you enter into a contract and the other side reneges, they don't perform, you can sue them and get a judgment. Of course, getting the collecting the judgment can be another matter sometimes. Okay, yeah, a very important function of government. A stable, uncorrupt government. Oh boy, my wife is from South America, and the story she tells, the governments down there are so corrupt. They just steal like crazy. They do whatever they want. And okay, we think we have a corrupt government here, and maybe we do on a small scale. We have scandals, but for the most part, they're alleged scandals. Okay, we have a lot of alleged scandals, not that many actual scandals, but this is small potatoes, the politics we have going on around here. We got a lot of checks and balances with the executive branch, the judicial branch, okay, and Congress, of course, they watch each other, but you get into, Mexico is a great example of a country that has all the natural resources they could ever need, and yet they're struggling with poverty. Why? Because they can't accumulate physical human capital. Why? That's why. You can't you can't attract a lot of investment. And this was the problem with Venezuela, a socialist and corrupt government. They just nationalized all kinds of investment in Venezuela. I mean, they just said, "Okay, sorry guys, we own it now. It's ours." And so, if there's any hint of that, you're not going to attract a lot of outside investment, capital investment, and so, yeah, very, very important. There has to be confidence that investment, property, legal system, all that exists. So capital investment and production and so forth can go forward. And no trade barriers. That's a big one. Trade is like friction, or excuse me, trade barriers are like friction. And the more barriers you have to trade, the more friction you've got, and the smaller the economic pie. So, those are the minimum. Okay, that's these things. You just got to have those things. You have those things in place, and your economy is going to have the environment where you can really capitalize on this. Natural resources. It doesn't help you if you have a lot of natural resources if you can't get at them. Okay, so I should say you got to have the resources, and you got to have government allowing you to get at them. Now that doesn't mean you can't protect the environment and all that, of course. But if you and politicians argue about this all the time. To what extent, do you shut it all down? Or are you more nimble in or a little more precise in allowing some exploration and some access? So that's a kind of a function of government as well, as how much access do you have to those natural resources? Okay, well, these are the main things. Create an environment under which these can flourish. Okay. Now I'm going to draw a line and add some more. Okay. Think of these as just creating the environment. Having a nice road for the wagon to drive down. Now we're going to have government actually get out of the wagon and push. Okay, so they're doing more than just, here they're just creating the environment so all this can take place. Now they're going to get out and push that wagon and help it out a little bit. Well, the accumulation of human capital, what can government do? Can they do something? Yes, indeed. I bet you, well, you're doing it right now. Who owns this school? Who owns this college? Okay. This is a 2-year campus of the State University of New York. State University. So, and my guess is most of you went to a public school. Back before public schools, a lot of people didn't go to school. They stayed out on the farm, and if you've seen Little House on the Prairie, it was a great, I mean, it's a TV show, but, a lot of people didn't go to school. They just didn't. There weren't schools available. And if you were rich, you could go to a private school. Almost nobody went to college. That was very difficult. And but nowadays, lots of investment in this, lots of encouragement in education, not only building schools, and they are helping out with student loans to help with college. Now, they may have overdone it. They've made it a little too easy, perhaps, and they've made it. They've written the checks a little too large, or a lot of students are getting into serious trouble with student debt, not realizing that there's a big difference between qualifying for a given amount of money and it being prudent that they borrow that much money. See, I would think that if I didn't know better, I would think, oh, well, they've approved me for, X thousands of dollars. I guess they think that's the prudent amount for me to borrow. No, not at all. It's just like a mortgage. Just because you qualify for that amount of mortgage doesn't mean it's financially prudent to borrow that much. So, anyway, I digress. But subsidizing student loans. Now, the thing is, if the private sector alone did student loans, there would hardly be any student loans because what's the collateral, guys? There's not a whole lot of collateral. Young people going to college, they're not going to be a lot of people lining up to lend money to young 18, 19, 20-year-olds going to college. That's just not a good risk. Frankly, most investors wouldn't do it. You know what? And if they did, they would have a ton of collateral. They would sign over. They would have all kinds of collateral if you had it. Again, maybe the family would have to co-sign, the parents, and then provide some collateral. And if you didn't have that, too bad. And on top of that, there would be very high interest rates on these loans because they're high risk and return. And high risk investments require a high return on their investments. So, and those high interest rates, really, if this was just left to a market, it probably just isn't going to work. There's not going to be enough money available out there in the private sector who are willing to take that kind of risk. So government steps in and subsidizes those student loans. They underwrite those student loans. Okay? Whether they've done a good job or too good a job or whatever, that's a debate that we can have. But why are they involved in the first place? Okay? That's why. So, same with public schools and public colleges. Are there too many? Are they too expensive? Are they, whatever? Are they too involved in sports or not? All right, you can have that discussion for sure. But why are there public schools in the first place? Why is government even involved in that? Well, this is why. Okay? They're trying to help society. We're pooling our money together, right, through taxation, and they're taking that and investing in schools so that we can accumulate this, so we can have more of this, and we can have a, higher standard of living. Bottom line. Okay, another area of government, encourage research and development.
Welcome to
Certainly,
Terminal 4.
Research and development, they can do this through tax breaks to companies who engage in research and development, and they can do it directly. So they can subsidize it for private enterprise to be involved in more than they otherwise would. Or NASA, you saw in the Economics USA video on productivity how NASA does a lot of research out there in space. A lot of things were developed as a result of their research. The military, this was the introduction of the internet. And so a lot of things come out of government directly investing in research and development, or they can, through taxation, tax breaks, subsidies, encourage research and development in the private sector. And patents, of course, that's enforcement of property rights. They talked about that in the Economics USA video as well. So that is another area. Protect those property rights, so it gives people a greater incentive to invent things, because once they invent them, they can get a patent on it. That means all that work, all that effort that they did can't just be stolen by someone else by copying what you did. And encourage capital investment, physical capital. Again, they can do this through mainly through taxation. They encourage it by lowering taxes on capital investment. It's called the capital gains tax. Capital gain is when, let's say you buy something at $10 and then sell it for 12. And so you have gained $2. That's called a capital gain. And capital gain typically are taxed at a lower rate than just ordinary income, our salaries and wages. So this encourages more money to flow into the financial markets, particularly stocks, and that makes more money available to invest in capital. So they can help that along. They can help that along by having a lower tax rate on the accumulation of capital. And that, of course, helps that one. So, the government role is very important one. First and foremost, create the environment. And you know what? If they want to get out of the wagon and push, okay, good enough. Get out and push a little. How much they should push, always a discussion there. Should they push or not? Okay, discussion there. At least a little bit. I mean, here, of course, I'm biased. This is where but long before I was a college professor, I believed in this one. This one is a huge one that provides opportunity. This is the great leveler. This is the great equality of opportunity. You know what? Pretty much anybody can get to a college, guys. Now, it's harder for some than others. There's no question about it. But especially our system of community colleges are just an amazing resource. And by the way, I've had students transfer. They've come here and they have done well, and they have transferred to all kinds of places. I've had students go on to Cornell. I've had students go on to NYU and University of Virginia and Notre Dame and University of Pennsylvania Law School, and so on and so on and so on and so on. Okay, they come here, they save a fortune, get good grades, they transfer, they have saved all that money for the last 2 years of their college, and perhaps graduate school, law school, and whatnot, MBA. So, you know what? I'm all in favor of that. I'm a big on research and development too. I'm kind of sharing my opinion here. I don't share my opinion much in this class, but I guess I'm sharing it now. And so when I'm sharing my opinion, I guess I tell you to put down your pencils if you ever picked them up. In the first place, put them down because my opinion doesn't matter. But I kind of like that, and I kind of like that. I like all those. I think it's fine if they get out and push a little. Okay, I'm not sure they should take over industries. No, my goodness, they do that, and then we're in trouble. We're in trouble. Sweden tried that in the 70s and 80s and nearly went broke. That's called socialism, by the way, when government takes over all this completely. And that has proven to be one of the greatest producers. Speaking of productivity, that has produced poverty, low standards of living, for reasons we'll talk about later. But the bottom line is that kind of system takes away incentives to be productive. And again, more about that later. So here we are. That does it. That does it for this section. So we're going to talk about some other stuff, obviously, but I thought I would try out a little bit of typing. I was bragging about my human capital typing. Of course, I didn't do that live. I can't type in front of people. I make mistakes, but I type great when no one's looking. So I thought, well, I'm not really drawing any graphs and equations here, so I gotta give you a treat where you could actually read my writing. So hopefully that helped.